It happened when I was 17, during winter break. My parents had gone out of town for a wedding, and I was home alone for the weekend. Our house was old, built in the 60s, with a creaky wooden staircase and a half-finished basement that always felt off. It wasn't the kind of basement you'd hang out in. There was an old furnace, some storage shelves, and a single light bulb with a pull chain that cast shadows like something out of a horror movie. That Friday night, I decided to stay up late, watch some horror movies, and enjoy having the house to myself. Around 1:30 a.m., while halfway through a movie, I heard a dull thud. It came from the basement. I paused the film, sat up, and listened. At first, I told myself it was the old house settling, something it did all the time. But then came a second thud. And this time, it sounded deliberate. Heavy. Like a footstep. My heart skipped. I muted the TV. Silence. But not the comfortable kind, more like the type that presses against your ears. Then I heard what I can only describe as a slow, dragging sound, something being moved across the basement floor. I grabbed the kitchen knife, turned on every light between the living room and the basement door, and stood there, debating whether I should open it. I was trying to act brave, but my hand was trembling so badly the knife rattled against the doorknob. I finally pushed the door open. The hallway light spilled down the stairs but didn't reach the bottom. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Step by step, I went down, my foot pressing lightly on each wooden stair to avoid making noise. The basement was cold. Colder than usual. I pulled the chain on the lone bulb. Nothing happened. It was dead. I was about to turn back when I heard it again, breathing. Heavy, deliberate breathing. But not from the front of the basement, it came from behind the storage shelves. Every part of me screamed to run, but I was frozen. That's when I saw movement. A shadow, slow and silent, just behind the shelves. I stumbled backward, dropped the knife, and bolted up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it and ran outside into the freezing cold. I called the police from my neighbor's house. When they arrived and searched the basement, they found signs that someone had been living there. An old blanket, food wrappers, even a backpack with some clothes inside. Whoever it was, they were gone by the time the cops got there. Later, I found out my dad had left one of the small basement windows unlocked, just big enough for someone to crawl through. The most terrifying part wasn't that someone had broken in. It was realizing they might have been living there for days, maybe even while I was sleeping upstairs. Since that night, I've never been comfortable in basements. And every time I hear a thud in the night, I check, because I know now / sometimes you're not alone, even when you think you are. It was the summer after my first year of college, and I had just moved back home temporarily. My parents had downsized to a smaller house while I was away, and this new place had a fully finished basement. They offered it to me as my own space, a little privacy, my own bathroom, and a separate entrance. It felt like a dream, at first. The first few nights were normal. I stayed up late playing games, watching Netflix, or scrolling endlessly on my phone. But on the fourth night, I woke up around 3:45 a.m. to a faint knocking sound. Not from the front door, but from inside the basement. At first, I thought it was the pipes or maybe the water heater. But the knocking wasn't rhythmic. It was hesitant. Soft. Almost like someone gently tapping their finger against a wall, trying not to be heard. I stayed still and listened. After a few seconds, it stopped. The next day, I asked my mom about the house. She mentioned the previous owner was an old man who had passed away, and his family sold the place quickly. She brushed off the knocking as old house sounds and told me not to overthink. But things got worse. I started waking up every night around the same time, between 3:30 and 4. And the knocking became more aggressive. Once, it lasted nearly a full minute. I turned on all the lights, checked the laundry room, the storage closet, nothing. But I felt it. That suffocating feeling that something was off. Like the air itself was watching me. The scariest night was the 7th. I had left my lamp on that night, too afraid to sleep in total darkness. Around 3:40 a.m., I woke up again, but not because of the knocking. This time, I heard whispering. Directly behind my bed. My bed was pushed up against a finished drywall, which covered the original brick. The voice was low and raspy. I couldn't understand the words, but they weren't kind. It was like someone talking through the wall. Frozen in place, I whispered, "Hello." It stopped immediately. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I pulled my bed away from the wall to check for any cracks or gaps, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A section of the wall, low near the floor, sounded hollow when I knocked on it. Like there was a space behind it. I told my dad, and we ended up cutting a small hole to check. Behind that wall wasn't just insulation, it was a hidden crawlspace. And inside, were old photographs. Dozens of them. Most of them were black and white, some faded with time. But what chilled me to the core was that a few were recent. One of them showed the basement just as it looked now, with my bed, my desk, even the posters I had put up. I moved out the same day. We never found out who took the photos or why that crawlspace existed. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear faint tapping sounds, now in my dreams. I wonder if I'd stayed longer, if I might have ended up in one of those photographs myself. It was 2016. I had just started working as a freelance graphic designer, and money was tight. I found a listing online for a cheap basement apartment in a quiet suburban neighborhood, about 30 minutes from the city. The photos looked clean, the rent was half the price of anything else, and the landlord seemed polite over the phone. It felt like a lucky break. When I moved in, everything was fine at first. The place was small but cozy, one bedroom, a bathroom, and a compact kitchenette. There were no windows, which I thought would bother me, but I got used to it. The only light came from a dim bulb in the hallway and one in the main room. I tried to brighten it up with lamps and wall art, but it always felt heavy. Like the air was thicker underground. 2 weeks in, small things started to happen. I'd hear faint footsteps above me around 2 or 3 a.m., even though the landlord said he lived alone and worked night shifts. I assumed maybe he had a roommate he didn't mention. But when I casually brought it up, he looked confused and said no one else was ever in the house. He even joked, maybe it's the house settling. That's when I started noticing the smell. Every few nights, a foul odor would fill the apartment. It was metallic, rotten, like decaying meat mixed with rust. It always came around midnight, lasting only a few minutes. I thought maybe something was wrong with the plumbing. I emailed the landlord. He told me the pipes were brand new and to open some baking soda near the drains. But I knew it wasn't coming from the sink. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. It was nearly 4 a.m. I was reading in bed when I heard something from behind the far wall, the one opposite my bed. It sounded like scratching. Not rats or mice, something bigger. Slower. With rhythm. Like fingernails. I stood frozen, staring at the wall. The scratching grew louder. And then, it stopped. I exhaled, relieved, until the light bulb above my bed flickered, and blew out. I jumped up, grabbed my phone, and used the flashlight. The room looked normal, but the wall. It had a new mark. A faint, narrow crack running from floor to ceiling. I swear it hadn't been there before. The next day, I asked the landlord again, this time more directly, if there had been anything unusual in the house's past. He laughed it off, called me paranoid, and said I was probably just not used to living underground. I didn't push it. But something inside me said he knew more than he let on. I started sleeping with headphones on, just to drown out the sounds. Until one night, I woke up without them. I don't know if I took them off or if something else did. Because they were neatly placed on the floor next to my bed. And on the wall, in the exact same spot where the crack had been, was a message. Written in black marker, so faint I almost missed it. Asterisk, stop listening. It doesn't like that. Asterisk. I moved out that morning. I didn't even wait for sunrise. I packed only my essentials and drove to a friend's house. Weeks later, out of curiosity, I looked up the address online. Buried deep in old news archives, I found a short article from the 1980s. A man had been arrested for keeping his mentally ill brother chained in the basement. Neighbors had reported screams, but no one had checked for months. The brother had died down there, alone in the dark. The landlord's last name? Same as the man in the article. Probably his son. I still get chills thinking about what could have happened if I'd stayed. If that crack in the wall had opened just a little more. Or if I hadn't stopped listening. And sometimes, when I close my eyes in total silence, I swear I still hear that scratching. If you want more true stories like this, subscribe. Because some basements hold more than just old furniture. Sometimes, they hold something that's still waiting.